Hello and welcome everyone to the Thermographic Diagnostic Imaging and Health Through Awareness webinar series. My name is Leisha Getson and I'll be your host. I'm a board certified technician with TDI and I'm also the founder of Health Through Awareness, a venture to bring like-minded individuals together to share their experience and expertise on a wide variety of holistic health topics via the monthly newsletters and webinars. So before we begin, just a little housekeeping. Tonight's presentation will run about 50 to 60 minutes, followed by Q&A. You should be able to hear me as well as the speaker and follow along with the PowerPoint presentation. To the right of your screen, you'll see a chat box. If you have a question, please type it in and we'll get to as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. If we don't get to your question, feel free to email it to us at tdi@comcast.net. If for some reason you get cut off from the webinar, you may be able to log back in and fast forward, but don't worry, the webinar will be archived on our website within a day or two and then also available on YouTube. So let's get started. It's my delight to introduce our guest speaker for this evening, Jennifer Capozzi. Jen is a plant medicine practitioner, a plant-based chef, an herbalist, and owner of Barloom Apothecary in Philadelphia. She'll be discussing breast health and lymphatic support utilizing plant medicine and whole foods. Jen has been working with plant medicine and whole foods for over 10 years as a chef and herbalist. She began her journey into herbal medicine as a means to manage and in hopes to stop the progression of a rheumatoid arthritis, which I hope she's going to share a little bit of her personal story about that. So Jen, welcome to our webinar. We're so pleased to have you with us tonight.
Thanks, Leisha. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be joining everybody this evening. So yeah, just to kind of share a little bit about me and what I'm up to nowadays. I work a lot with sustainable agriculture and farming and local farms to connect all my clients with really beautiful food to kind of help them on their journey on top of weaving in plant medicine. And so last summer, and now I'm getting ready this summer to connect with some farms across country where I highlight a lot of their growing practices and food and kind of share a bit about their story and then produce a really beautiful plant-based meal that falls into the guidelines of being anti-inflammatory, which we're going to talk a little bit about tonight, and just really how food can truly change your health radically. And it's the quality of that food that I think we need to have a more of a dialogue about in today's society about growing practices and how food is actually produced and how that ultimately translates over into our overall health. And I really got started in that because I've had rheumatoid arthritis since the age of 16. I'm in my 30s now, and I had a very severe onset of that. And, I have non-hereditary rheumatoid arthritis, which was something that wasn't quite diagnosable way back then. And so typically RA, if folks are familiar with it, the onset is usually before the age of 20, and it's 80% more predominant in women than it is in men. And it is not hereditary in my family. I actually kind of had an interesting perfect storm of too many vaccines administered in a short period of time and traumatic stress.
That'll do it.
So I'm a perfect example really of talking about severe stress and not managing it appropriately and ultimately how that manifests in the body. So stress is just, a phenomenal thing and can really wreak havoc if we don't start addressing that in appropriate ways. So I hope, as I work with people and share with you tonight, that part of my journey can just, be an inspiration and also just to learn kind of from my mistakes going through life, because that's how we ultimately learn anyways, is, to be more mindful and thoughtful of that internal dialogue that we have with ourselves and it's okay to take some time out and work through things, and really talking about self-care is tremendous. And ultimately that kind of is life and death in a lot of ways. So,
our bodies have a way of slowing us down, right? I mean,
they
when
absolutely
too
do.
much of a burden on them, they say, whoa, time to take a break.
Yes, absolutely.
And we try not to get to that point.
No, we don't.
We don't want to get to that point. Yes.
Yeah. So, so tonight I really kind of wanted to talk about the lymphatic system, breast health, and inflammation, how that actually all kind of works together, and pointing to stress in those ways. But and just to give some helpful information, some key points on foods, herbs that are really wonderful for lymphatics and breast health, and then some of my favorite essential oils, and kind of dig into those. And so if we're ready, I can jump into that. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got my pen ready for notes.
All right, great. So, like I said, we're going to be discussing how to support the lymphatic system. And, that could be like a whole, month-long, 2-month-long in-depth series on just talking about how incredible the lymphatic system is. But I just really wanted to give a couple key points here. The lymphatic system helps remove toxins and dead cells. It's the primary component of our immune system. It contains our white blood cells that helps destroy bacteria, and it helps carry infections away from the body. The lymph system also plays a major role in maintaining the acid and alkaline balance of the body. And when our lymph glands become congested and obstructed, the surrounding glands can become acidic, creating inflammation. So really kind of being mindful in the fact that, when we've got too much going on in our body and there's too many toxins building up, that can just kind of, again, bleed into everything else. So the lymphatic system is tremendous in maintaining the health of our bloods and the fluid in our body. That's its main goal. And it regulates the quality and health of our blood. So if we're feeding ourselves too many toxins or toxic food, and that would be things that are heavily processed. Obviously, sugar is a huge, huge no-no. Is poison. Canned foods, processed foods, things that are laden with, oh my gosh, the word is escaping me. Preservatives. Thank you.
GMOs.
Yes, GMOs and all of those things. And going back to what I just talked about earlier with part of my trek across country is really paying attention to how our food's produced and ultimately how that translates over. So and the other big component of that is our stress. So again, even though everybody has different stressors in their lives, everybody's got something going on, but really being mindful of how can we navigate through that where we're not just constantly taking things on, weighing ourselves down, agonizing over all of these things, but how can we use mindfulness and reframing those stressors and dealing with the things that are really essential, and kind of putting them in their appropriate places and not trying to always be in this place of survival, and kind of packaging that in the appropriate way, because ultimately that stress affects our hormone function, our sleep, and those two very key things lead to major imbalance. So, and one of those big things is manifesting as inflammation. And in women, we know with stress and cortisol levels, that just packs on a different type of weight gain that can be really hard to lose as we get older.
Yeah, I don't know if not too many people are aware of that. So I hope you touch on that a little bit more, that the cortisol and the weight gain.
Yeah. So let's move on here. One of the things is, so how can we care for and strengthen and support such a complex system? And again, that's just being mindful, reducing inflammatory response, and focusing on whole foods and plant medicine. So, inflammation? How does that affect the lymphatic system? Actually, maybe I should back up here for a minute.
Go ahead.
So
You're in
really just
control. Mhm.
um, so really kind of talking about whole foods and what does that actually mean? A lot of people just have a tremendously hard time wrapping their arms around, what is the right diet for me? We're all kind of looking for the next fad diet. And there's so many of them out there, and they, promise certain results and, follow X, Y, and Z, and this is how it works. When really, we're neglecting the fact that we need to actually check in with ourselves and see how we respond to the foods that we're eating. And ultimately, we know what those answers are. So a big thing of what I do is cultivating that intuition that we always kind of put to the wayside, because we live in a society where we are just constantly on to the next. We want an immediate response. We don't want to do the work. We don't want to actually sit there and check in, and we're just on to the next thing. And so when we talk about being mindful and strengthening our bodies, that means that we actually have to check in. And that
Scary.
sometimes is exceedingly scary, because we
Right.
have to deal with the good, the bad, and the ugly. And,
Right.
you can't separate out your physical body from your emotional and spiritual and how you process life, because it all works together. So, and that's the fascinating thing that has been so incredible on my own personal journey, is really looking at how food and plant medicine ultimately ties into how my brain works, how my emotions are, and what do I want to support in my strength and strengthen myself with. So plants have this incredible capacity to either meet you where you're at and you're just focusing on the physical, or it can far exceed that and help you on your other journey, supporting you emotionally and spiritually, should that resonate for you. So I can't really talk enough about how profound that is, especially when you're feeding yourself, food that is so pure and so clean and really tailored to, oh my gosh, how does my body respond to this? When I eat an avocado, does my brain light up? Yes, absolutely it does. And why does it do that? So some of that can be, again, exceedingly overwhelming for folks, or it can be incredibly enlightening, because you have these aha moments, and exceedingly empowering, because ultimately you're taking control of your health. You already know the answers for what you need and what resonates and what doesn't. It just takes the time and the effort to cultivate that intuition and to check in. And that truly is the most important thing I hope I can convey tonight as I share this with you, is that, what we're talking about this evening is just some guidelines, but please, 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 be thoughtful about what you're actually putting into your mouth and into your mind and into your life, and how that ultimately, all works together, and you can cultivate the life that you want. But, it all starts with kind of checking in and being really clear on what those desires are for yourself. So
very important. I agree that that's key, right, Jen? I mean,
yeah,
there's so many disconnects going on now. So many outside stimuli, people going outside of themselves for answers instead of being able to just tune in to their inner guidance and inner wisdom that we all have. It's great to seek
yeah,
out practitioners like yourself and get on a path, but we also do have to check in with ourselves. And when you talk about you're creating your whole body with whatever you're putting into it, right? You remake your whole body in 7 years or something, is it, right? So
yeah,
if you're
absolutely.
taking in only whole foods, the people that you surround yourself in with, even whatever you're listening to, what you're watching, what you're reading, your spiritual
Mm-hmm.
practice, all of that. And even when it comes to that, your spiritual practice, if you're eating a clean diet, for me, I found this, I have a much clearer connection to what I'll call
Mm-hmm.
source, as
Yeah,
opposed to if
absolutely.
I'm full of if I were to fill my system up with garbage,
Mm-hmm.
there is no connection.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
there's no clear antenna. So
No, and
just
I can definitely speak to that just on my own journey. So,
please.
when I was 19, I was finally able to get diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Finally got to the right doctor. Finally was getting some answers because at first they just thought I was in liver failure, basically.
Oh boy.
And so I showed up to my now rheumatologist that I've had forever
Okay.
since then as one of the worst cases of RA that he's ever seen.
Wow.
You know, I was under 100 pounds. I had 25 cc's of fluid in both my knees.
Oh.
And he was just like, I don't know how you're still alive living
Oh.
in such a state of severe inflammation, because my inflammatory or SED rate was off the charts. And, you know, when we think about autoimmune deficiency, especially when we talk about rheumatoid arthritis, we just think it affects the joints, but it's actually your whole body that's in a state of inflammation. So it's not just your joint tissue, but it's your arteries, it's your heart, it's all your internal organs, it's your nerve endings when it's in a severe state. So, but leading up to this point, you know, I had gotten a pretty clear indicator growing up as an Italian girl, eating a lot of pasta and sauce and Italian bread, that aggravated my inflammation so severely that, you know, it made me even more immobile. And I was already having difficulty being able to like lift my arm to scratch my face, let alone walk to the bathroom.
Oh my God.
So I started down that path of, oh my gosh, what am I putting in my mouth? And ultimately, how does that affect me actually being able to function? And so at 17, 18, I started eliminating gluten. And that even wasn't, you know, a big deal back then. It was really
Right.
hard to find, you know, gluten-free whatever. And then, you know, eating meat causes more uric acid in the digestive tract. And that had an inflammatory response. So I started whittling away all these things and then doing a lot of research on, you know, well, why is my body responding this way? How does this actually work? And that was tremendous for me. It was like this aha moment of like, oh my gosh, I might be able to fix this.
Right. Yeah.
And so, you know, but also really struggling trying to navigate like, I don't want to die from this. I want a better quality of life. Well, the only, you know, route that I have in front of me is to go down the pharmaceutical path. And so I did just that. You know, I was on Humira, methotrexate, Mobic, which, you know, we see commercials for Humira all the time now because they're using it for everything. But at 23, because of that cocktail that I had been on, I almost lost my liver, like ready for a liver transplant.
Oh my gosh.
Even though I had started, you know, really being very thorough about what I was eating. And so that was like a game changer for me. I was like, you know what? That's it. I am, you know, really changing my diet drastically where I feel like what I put in my mouth can actually heal and repair my body. And I still have my liver. It's
Okay.
operating perfectly.
Good.
And you can truly regenerate your organs in that 7-year
Yeah.
time if you're feeding it the right way. So, you know, kind of touching on your comment that you said before,
Right.
been there, you know,
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing. But anyways,
Let
I
me
feel
ask you, this might be too personal a question, but I
sure.
also grew up in an Italian family.
Yeah.
And how did your family react to that? You know, because pasta and bread and, you know, were they supportive? Did you get a
No,
little help? That's what I would think, like,
not at all.
yeah, it would have been like, what's wrong with you, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
there's a problem, but um,
Yep.
we run into that, right? But at such a young age, you're trying to figure this out yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And I think that's the other thing too, you know, is, you know, we move through life and we look to other people in a lot of ways to lean on, especially when we don't feel well. Um, And, it's those day-to-day things that we really would love support with. But that was a hard lesson to learn, especially when it came to food. Nobody was going to cook for me.
Right.
And you have to do that for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately, again, if you want it bad enough, you'll do whatever it takes.
Right.
And
Right.
and it's hard to say that truly if we don't feel well, and
Yeah.
I get that absolutely, because there's a whole other component to, when your health has been compromised, or even, your mental state's been compromised. There's depression, there's anxiety, there's all these things that go along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you really have to be that advocate and source of change for yourself, because nobody
Mm-hmm.
else is going to do it for you.
Right.
So
Very
yeah.
true. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing on that.
No
Appreciate it.
problem. Yeah. So anyways, talking about inflammation and lymphatic effects. So inflammation is your immune and lymphatic system's natural response to foreign invaders. So for a lot of people, that can be bacteria, virus, parasites, but it can also be, if we're eating something that's not good for us, your digestion is going to be off, or you're going to have, difficulty with bowel movements, all of these things. Our
Mm-hmm.
food, again, is crucial, because that is the life force that sustains us to keep going. But if that food's compromised or overly processed, or exposed to certain things, that can lead to bacteria or parasites. So again, really being mindful about what we're putting in our mouth, and ultimately what that leads to is inflammation. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's two states truly of inflammation, which is acute and chronic. And I just kind of wanted to explain that a little bit so folks
Please.
can kind
Yes.
of wrap their arms around that. So acute inflammation is the body's natural initial response to invaders. So this is when, your body's saying, oh my gosh, there's something here that shouldn't be here. We're going to send lymph fluid, which is plasma and immune cells, to just attack these invaders and kind of wick away those damaged cells that are also, part of the battle, and kind of move that and detox it out of your system. So our initial body's response is inflammation, and we can see that in the lymph nodes. And typically what we're talking about for women here is, in the breast area under the arm. We also have lymph nodes that are located under their collarbones and on either side of the breastbone. And again, if our diet's not that great, especially if we're consuming a lot of sugar or soda, you can see fibroid lumps, or just especially around that time of the month, build up in inflammation. So, that would be your body's like acute response of saying like, hey, you're eating something that's not so great here. Let's like manage this a little bit. Or you've got too many toxins in your system. There's also lymph nodes all over your body, but just something to be aware of is
Mm-hmm.
when that happens. Chronic inflammation is when there's prolonged activity in a compromised area. So for me, having RA, chronic inflammation affects your joint tissue, again, or internal organs. And you see that, when your joint's in a chronic state of inflammation, you can have deterioration in that joint tissue or tissue in general, uh, you know, deformities, and then obviously could lead to possible joint replacement or compromised tissue that needs to be removed. So, and that's basically an autoimmune response where your body just is constantly staying in this place of panic, attack,
Uh-huh.
fighting all the
Mm.
time, which is exhausting,
Mm.
So, and there's excessive fluid that's constantly going through to these compromised areas in the body, because that's what inflammation essentially is. Your body's sending water to this area to cool it down, because, it's hot from all this dead tissue, damaged
Mm.
cells, T cells, plasma. There's just a whole war going on in this little
Oh,
area. So if you kind of look at it that way, is there's a battle happening.
right. What was
um,
happening to your adrenals at this time?
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other thing to really talk about. Being in a chronic state of inflammation, your adrenal response, your nerve endings become frayed. Usually, kind of going hand in hand with this discomfort is there's lack of sleep, which for some people can lead to insomnia. But
Mm-hmm.
poor quality of sleep absolutely affects your brain function, your body function, and again, how we process our hormones as well, because we need that quality sleep time to repair our bodies. It's so
Mm-hmm.
important, and again, everybody's different. Some people need 6 hours, some people need 10 hours, but it's finding that sweet spot and really honoring that and making sure you get it, is truly important.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I had another thought there, but it might come back to me.
It must have something to do with adrenals. So I wondered if you were going into adrenal fatigue, or it was affecting your adrenals, and
Sure.
that you're aware of. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I we can absolutely talk about that. Adrenal fatigue is tremendous. So many people today are dealing with it and really aren't quite aware of it. Because again, it's going back to that state of panic and survival.
Mm-hmm.
Typically today, we just don't manage our stress appropriately. And stress, like I touched upon earlier, really can affect our hormone production, because your brain's producing certain chemicals that are saying, I'm in, fight or flight mode. Um, and typically for women, that can be cortisol, and men produce cortisol as well, but women kind of process that differently. Um, and so, when we're constantly like tense, we're operating from, our gut, our root chakra, we're basically clenched. You're
Yes.
just like, oh, I can't breathe. I've got all this stuff going on, and you feel like this weight, that's really just truly weighing you down, and that stress, which hopefully I'm hitting on some emotional points here for people that can resonate.
Yes.
But that affects people in different ways. So I can speak from my own experience. Going through something like this, I had, being in a constant state of pain and discomfort. Chronic pain leads to anger.
Mm-hmm.
So I was constantly in a state of anger. The slightest thing, just, I wanted to like rip somebody's head off, because I was
Mm-hmm.
just like, I can't get any relief. I can't get any comfort. I'm just trying to survive, walking to work and, doing just simple menial tasks were just so overwhelming to me. And that ultimately bled into, I had severe adrenal fatigue, and lack of sleep also really played into that as well, battling insomnia,
Mm-hmm.
so, so how do you actually like work through that and move through it? And again, the foundational component of that goes back to food. And so that's kind of where I was going next, is,
Okay.
really talking about what are some inflammatory triggers that also, bleed into everything else: adrenal health, mental health, managing stress, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So, due to many aspects of our life and society today, kind of what I was just talking about, survival stressors from every aspect of life. Um, so, managing stress and food, they really kind of go together, and that imbalance can lead to, you know, wreak havoc. It's ultimately, continuing on that path is really life and death. And, we look at kind of what's going on in our country today with folks that are either mindful about what they're eating or they're not. You can see that great divide that's happening right now, and it's pretty
Mm-hmm.
frightening.
Yes.
And the other thing that's also terribly frightening as well is that our traditional healthcare system today is not really open to discussing alternative treatments. And it's really hard to find some practitioners that are willing to have that open dialogue and kind of reach across the aisle here to work with, other wellness coaches or practitioners like you guys,
Mm-hmm.
that are really trying to get down to like the nuts and bolts of are people day to day living their lives, what they're putting in their bodies? How can we support them mindfully through life in general? And how important that is. And, some people are catching on. Again, some people are tremendously overwhelmed, and that's something that I see a lot, and I'm sure you guys do too.
Oh, yeah.
And just kind of being able to come alongside and put a plan of action together, so that it's not so overwhelming, and to move forward. It's not an overnight immediate response, kind of going back to popping that pill and, now my headache's gone, but you're still just sweeping everything under the rug.
Right.
Deficiency or prolonged habits that hinder the body cause weakness, where your immune and lymphatic system are not strong enough to fight off invaders or small triggers. So again, if we're kind of perpetually living this lifestyle where we're not addressing things, eventually that catches up with us, and that's when we start to see health issues. Triggers for a weakened state are typically foods, pollens, animal dander. Those are things that are tangible that we can talk about.
Okay.
But then there's also other triggers, again, going back to that stress component and how we process that, and ultimately that internal dialogue that we have with ourselves. And I think a lot of folks can say, if that internal dialogue is pretty nasty. I mean, I've definitely been there where there were times where I was just like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't even talk this way to my worst enemy. And this is how I'm talking to myself. How am I supposed to dig myself out of this hole right now?
Yeah, right.
So it's really being able to connect with yourself and to be gentle, and encouraging and supportive for you. And that's so hard to do. I feel like that's almost harder than saying I'm cutting sugar out of my diet and I'm not eating tomatoes,
Right. Yeah, that's a very huge component, Jen. Self-care, self-love.
Absolutely.
People just they're not programmed that way. We'll beat ourselves up and tear ourselves down, but to to look in the mirror and say I love you, it's no. They, people I think confuse it with being selfish, when
Right.
self-care is the most loving thing you can do, and
Absolutely.
it has to start there. There are tons of all of these fantastic webinars and summits that are going on right now. The tapping solution, for one,
Oh yeah.
really can take you through this, and it's just beautiful. But everybody's saying the same thing. Really starts with yourself, and you've got to stop that negative self-talk. We cannot allow it.
Absolutely.
It has to, without judgment, right? Without being hard on yourself or harsh. Yes.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing is, willing to truly be honest about, that vulnerability of what you have going on. And if you don't have the right people in your life, and I'm not necessarily saying it has to be family or friends, sometimes it's a great practitioner or a phenomenal therapist, but finding that place where you can truly be honest and vulnerable with what you've got going on in your life is probably the most freeing thing that you can do. And truly one of the greatest acts of self-care is really being real with yourself. And then how can I work through this, is crucial. I think did my screen just go blank?
Not on my end, it didn't. I'm still seeing inflammatory triggers.
It did on my end for some reason.
All right. Do you need a little help as to how to bring it back up?
Nope. Here we go.
Alrighty.
Hold on one second. Yep. I just heard a little noise. There we go. So yeah, I just going back to that. That self-care is truly important.
And people need permission to do that. Like, you have permission to take care of yourself. You have permission to love yourself.
Yeah, and you also have permission to forgive yourself,
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest thing is, we arrive at this point of imbalance in whatever way, shape, or form, that shows up for people. And we can go to this place of instantly, belittling and being mad at ourselves. Why did I do this? Or completely ignoring it. or choosing to deal with it, but also having compassion, saying, you know what, now I know. Doing the best I can with what I've got. Now I know. Now I can move forward. Now I can start to, unpack this and put a plan of action together, and start exploring those things. But, absolutely, I think being able to forgive yourself and kind of move on is tremendous. And there's a wonderful thing called mantras. That's something that I definitely have done for myself is, I'm allowed to give myself this grace and to move forward, to feel this way, but to move on. I'm not going to stay in this place of being angry or depressed, but now I know why I'm here, and now I know what I want. I don't want to be here. So let's move on to the next thing. So those are, I would say, emotional triggers, but I'm going to talk about food right now. So a few key triggers that can cause inflammation. So these are the big ones that I see a lot, because typically a lot of the clients that I work with are dealing with autoimmune deficiency, or are going through cancer treatment or surviving cancer, or trying to rebuild their whole body after going through extensive treatment. And also post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, and migraines actually are a big one. And so kind of approaching migraines just as anything else, it's inflammation in the brain. What are things that we can avoid that do stimulate inflammation in the body? So a big one is nightshades. And going back to being an Italian girl, you see these first three items: tomatoes, pepper, and eggplants. Oh my gosh, what do I do? That's all I've been eating my entire life. How can I still satisfy and get that comfort? But nightshades hold a tremendous amount of acid, and that translates over into the digestive tract. White potatoes are another one. Sweet potatoes, however, are a completely different animal and should be enjoyed extensively because they're high in antioxidants. They've got a lot of fiber. They're beautiful. And red meat consumption. So when we eat a lot of red meat, it can produce more uric acid in the digestive tract, and that can lead to more inflammation. So if your diet is, meat and potatoes, you're fueling that inflammatory, machine, basically. You're feeding that animal quite a bit. And the other thing to be mindful too is we talk about meat in general, especially if you look at the way that it's produced today in the United States, is pretty terrifying. There's been a lot of phenomenal documentaries out there to really kind of open that up and shed some light on how our food is being produced. And I can really dig deep on this topic, but I know my time window is starting to dwindle here. But a few things I will say.
You're going to do a documentary on that, aren't you, Jen?
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. That's definitely a documentary. And I hate to interrupt you, but I don't know what slide you're on, but I still have inflammatory triggers up. Is that where you're at?
Yeah, but I'm talking about nightshades and red meat consumption.
But that's not a slide. I don't see that slide now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But as long as you're going along, it'll probably, when we put it all together on the website, it'll catch up. Mine is not forwarding, so.
Okay.
I don't know if other people are experiencing that, but
hopefully not.
That's okay. You just keep on going. Yep.
Okay. Well, real quick, meat consumption. Today, a lot of majority of the animal feed that's fed to, cows and chickens pretty much contains, expired pharmaceutical drugs. So we're still getting that in our system somehow, which is pretty terrifying. They're also laden with different hormones and antibiotics to keep these animals basically surviving till they reach a certain weight so that they can be processed. But that also translates over into our overall health, So it's just something to really be mindful of. There's a lot of great TED Talks that are talking about meat consumption. I could definitely highlight quite a few of those, but do your due diligence on that. There are also are a lot of wonderful farms out there that are really doing it right, talking about taking beautiful care of their animals. They're not, packed in like sardines and standing in their own feces, but they're actually out, enjoying the green grass and open pastures and really getting a lot of love. So if you do feel like that meat resonates in your diet or that you need it, once or twice a week, really be mindful about who you're connecting with to get that source from, because that is crucially important, again, in translating over into your overall health. A couple other things is shellfish or seafood, especially bottom feeders like shrimp or crustaceans. They harbor a lot of extensive toxins because they're kind of, feeding on the scraps down there. So that can trigger quite a bit of inflammation as well. White sugar, obviously. Processed food is huge, which we talked about earlier. And then I'll just talk a little bit about wheat and gluten, just because that's a whole other rabbit hole along with with meat. But again, going back to how our food is processed, and just because you decide to go gluten-free, but you go to the store and buy every product that says gluten-free on it, doesn't actually mean that it's good for you. So we talk about how our grains are produced today. They're still genetically modified, majority of what people are consuming. And traditionally grains, we didn't see this issue 60 years ago until, our food became mass produced and industrialized. But grains were something that we really took pride in, and they were harvested, they were soaked, and that soaking process actually, opens up that casing that's around the wheat grain, and then it's dried and milled. And that soaking process actually allows our digestive tract to break down and assimilate all those nutrients. We don't do that today. We, have a shorter growing season. We, spray it with a million different pesticides and chemicals. And then we process it and we eat it. And then you wonder why people can't digest it and are having, this upsurgence in celiacs. And now we see our, profitability and market kind of reaching that need with having other chemical laden processed food that's now gluten-free, but is still not something that's actually healthy for you. So a lot of what I do as a chef and how I actually got started, being an Italian girl, I grew up baking with my family and was taking a lot of my grandma and my great grandma's traditional Italian recipes and converting them over to gluten-free, which was hand blending these beautiful sprouted flours or alternative flours to still create something that was delicious, that didn't have sugar in it, because you could use, coconut sugar or whatever. And being able to satisfy that craving for something comforting and sweet, but actually having it be something that's incredibly supportive and nutrient dense. So that is a possible thing. And if that's something that anybody's interested in or wants to talk more about or needs more education on, my contact info is at the end. But like I said, that's like a whole other can of worms to go into. But gluten in wheat today is, a tremendous thing that we're seeing now in today's, climate, that, people are having a hard time processing. And that's why, because basically we're eating something that's indigestible.
Wow.
And your body is screaming out saying, please don't feed me this. So,
thanks for breaking that down.
Yeah, as quickly as I possibly could.
No, I mean, in a very quick way. It's understandable. Yep.
Yeah, so hopefully that makes sense. So moving into some of the key herbs that can help balance the immune system and support the lymphatic system. So I just listed 6, but there's plenty more, trust me, that, can be tremendously helpful. They're pretty easy to get your hands on. There's some great resources that I'd be happy to help people find. But Mountain Rose Herbs, Rosemary Gladstar, she's kind of like the grandma of herbal medicine. She's just a tremendous wealth of knowledge. she has all organic, sustainably processed dried herbs. And so this would be great to kind of have fun and mix up your own teas if you like. But some of the ones that I highlighted here are astragalus root. It's great immune tonic, promotes balance and harmony. And when it's partnered with other herbs, especially for a compromised immune system, it really kind of provides that extra kick. It's kind of one of those beautiful supportive herbs that when you pair it with something else, it really works harmoniously together, and it's a fun one.
Okay.
Another one's dandelion root and leaf. Dandelion we see everywhere. It's underappreciated because we consider it as a weed, and it's actually probably one of the coolest, in my mind, herbal plants, because the root is tremendous in actually helping to filter out toxins. It also can remove heavy metals. It's supportive to the liver and kidneys. And the leaf helps kind of stimulate that digestion. It's a purifying agent. So every internal organ that it passes through, it detoxifies, purifies, but also nourishes as it moves through. And it's great for cleansing the lymphatic system and helping to remove any buildup of waste. So that's definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah.
You can use the whole plant, which is pretty fun. There's devil's claw too, which is lymphatic stimulating. So again, if we're experiencing kind of a blockage or an inflamed lymph node, devil's claw is really great to help kind of release that and address the inflammation and drain that out, and then wick it out of the system. So a big thing to be mindful of when you're starting to get into using herbs or essential oils. Again, we talked about diet, really wanting that to be clean and clear. But another key component is making sure that you're drinking plenty of water, because that's the best way to get this out of your system. So really to be mindful of that intake and, drinking plenty of water. Going to the bathroom is a beautiful thing. So that's something that I can't stress enough. So a couple other ones would be golden seal. These are all on my slides, and hopefully you're seeing them as we're going along here. It also boosts the cleansing process of the lymphatic system. Club moss, also known as wolf's foot, is also a great one for inflamed or swollen lymph nodes. Also tonsils, anything that has quite a bit of bacteria buildup. Is really great. And then you could also use some other things like calendula or lavender. They're great. They're very soothing. Lavender is very familiar to a lot of people because of those properties. It's relaxing, it's soothing. If you experience a burn or inflammation, that's just a great one to kind of cool that down. It has a cooling effect. So that's another great one to include. It tastes delicious. So all of these together would make a really lovely tea for anybody that, is experiencing inflammation or any swelling in any of their lymph nodes throughout their body, but especially in the breast area. This would be, a great tea to kind of put together for yourself.
And these herbs and unfortunately that it's not, I don't see this on my screen, but I wrote down all the herbs. So these are herbs that you would make a tea. Would you make a poultice out of this at all? And
sure, you could absolutely do that. There's some other ones that I would suggest for a poultice, like plantain leaf really draws things out. But a lot of what I like, actually, especially talking about breast health, which moves into my next slides here, is talking about essential oils that help balance the immune system. So tea, I think, is really important. You could also do a tincture, which is basically taking these dried herbs and putting them in a mason jar, filling it all the way to the top, and then adding grain alcohol to that and letting it steep for 6 weeks. Basically, that grain alcohol pulls all the medicinal constituents of the plant into the liquid, and it makes a very concentrated form of plant medicine. So you would take that in eyedropperfuls, and you could put that under the tongue or in your tea or in a shot glass of juice, whatever way you want to get it into your system. So those are two great ways to kind of use those herbs that I suggested. But the most accessible and easy one is to make a beautiful, pot of tea. And that's also a wonderful act of self-care. You're taking time out to really check in, nourish your body, support yourself, meditate, breathe. Yeah.
Jen, can
But
I
some of the
interrupt you
other,
for 1 second? Because a
yeah,
couple
sure.
people have said the slides are not moving forward. So my
Okay.
computer technical person is asking me to ask you
Sure.
to hit the left arrow. Is that what you're saying? You,
The,
me, or Jen? Okay, and see if
oh,
anything happens.
the left arrow.
Yeah,
Does
you
that
know,
work?
no, it's still not moving for me.
Hmm.
What is it?
Uh,
Do you see a little P at the bottom of your screen?
I
Red P?
do for PowerPoint. I do.
You
I
want her
do.
to click on that? All right, I'm being told to ask you to click on that.
Okay. I clicked.
Bear with us, folks.
Yeah. Hmm. Maybe do you want me to turn off the screen share and then turn it back on? Maybe that'll reset it.
Should she turn off the screen share and then turn it back on?
Did she click on the P?
Yeah.
I did, yeah.
Try to turn it off and turn it back on.
Well, if you want to give it a shot.
All right, here we go. Can you see?
Oh, look at that. Essential oils for lymphatic support.
Ta-da!
Yay!
Oh, technology.
There you go. Good job. So there you go, Sharon and Alana. Hopefully you'll see.
Oh, sorry about that,
No,
guys.
it's not. Look, it's not your fault. It's technology. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. Okay, great.
All right. Well, so quickly here,
Yeah.
these are my last couple of slides. So just talking about essential oils, I just, again, put a handful up here just to give people some idea of what to use. So cedarwood is a great one. Again, it kind of speaks to that adrenal exhaustion. It's an antidepressant, which is wonderful. It also helps with increasing sexual energy. Ta-da! Aphrodisiac. Everybody, that's a whole other thing that somebody needs to talk about.
Yes, exactly.
And also supporting the lymphatic system. On top of that, talking about, again, going back to plants and how incredible they are. We talk about the energetics of plants, which is, again, a whole other topic. But cedarwood and any of the trees are really great for grounding and supportive. Some of them have more feminine energy, other more masculine. So these are great as kind of like a foundational essence to build upon. And that's usually how I work with folks, is I really want to make sure that you're rooted and you're grounded, and then we kind of move on from there. Chamomile is another great one. For insomnia, antibacterial, antidepressant, but it's also great for the lymphatic system. And chamomile is actually one of the few that are kind of underappreciated. It's great for folks that are going through cancer treatment to help maintain your white blood cell count as well. So that's just another great one to include in there.
Liver and spleen congestion.
Yeah,
that's great.
Absolutely. And most essential oils, again, going back to like food, plant medicine, oils, not everything's created equal. So really do your due diligence when you're working with essential oils to make sure that, they're not blended with carrier oils, that they're therapeutic or medicinal grade essential oils, and, kind of do a little bit of research on that. Greenland moss is another one that's really wonderful, especially if you've got toxic glands. This is a big one that, I recommend a lot for people with thyroid issues as well. and regulating hyper and hypothyroidism. It's a great one. Inflammation of lymph nodes, glands, prostate, muscles also helps with water retention. Again, kind of speaking to this whole lymphatic and inflammatory immune response. Where we have excess water and toxins. Greenland moss is a heavy hitter in being able to kind of remove that from the body and support you gently as you're doing that.
Are these things you would take orally?
No, applying them topically.
Okay.
So you could apply them directly to, let's say, if you were experiencing inflammation in any of the lymph nodes in the breast area, you could apply them directly to that spot. But typically, when I work with folks, is I suggest that they apply the essential oils to their stomach, because that's the hub. All your internal organs are there, your immune system's there, and it goes directly into your bloodstream. And so you really want to nourish that part of the body and then kind of work your way out. So that would be the first point of contact. And then, any other areas that are compromised, then apply some drops of essential oils to those spots as well.
Okay.
So, myrtle, excuse me, is another great one. Wonderful for insomnia as well. This one's great for folks that typically might be experiencing quite a few digestive problems. If they've, had a pretty toxic diet, this would be something that I would recommend for them to use on top of, talking about diet and different herbs as well. But this is a great one. Nerolina is another wonderful one. This one's also great for rheumatoid arthritis, also migraines, bursitis, arthritis, rheumatism. But one of my favorites that I save for the last, and also in alphabetical order, is ylang ylang. This one I absolutely love. It's got this beautiful, sensual smell. It's an aphrodisiac, but it's a body regenerator. So it's another one that I use a lot for folks that have adrenal fatigue, any tissue damage. It helps clear out infections in the genitals of both men and women. It's also a breast toner, which is great. So, it helps with firming up breast tissue. So, going back to, talking about breast health and self-care and checking in, doing those breast exams and checking and making sure that everything's the way that it should be. Applying ylang ylang is just a really beautiful way to do that. Supporting that tissue and all of those lymph nodes that are in the area, glands, hormonal production, etc. So I use this pretty much every day. I can't advocate enough for it. If you make your own deodorant, this is a beautiful thing to add to that, because you're applying it to the underarm area. And there's so many lymph nodes that are there as well. So those would be just a few that I would suggest. There's many, many more depending on the person and what they've got going on. But these are just a handful to kind of give you an idea.
Now, somebody shouldn't, just go out and purchase these, as you said. Make sure it's coming from a good source, and talk to somebody that knows, like yourself, about how to apply these or use these. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here for, is, and this is why I do what I do, is, this started as a place of just being able to take care of myself, and then, really wanting to be able to share that with other folks. So yes, I've studied as a herbalist for over 8 years now. I've had my master's in medicinal essential oils for about 10. And I've practiced as a chef longer than that before I really delved into, whole foods and plant medicine and restorative healthcare through food and weaving in that herbal medicine. So it's been a lot of fun because it stemmed from a place of loving myself and then really wanting to love and nourish other people through that process. So,
right. And you said that beautifully in something you had written that was, on the website, said was part of your write-up. Currently, Jen is on a cross-country journey visiting farms that sustain the earth and their communities, while also sharing her own journey from sickness to health to healer. I just thought that was so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's definitely been a wild ride.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
look at where you're at. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
We're grateful that you had the persistence and resilience and intestinal fortitude to see it through.
Well, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So,
Um,
interested in more, you can reach out and connect with Jen at that phone number, 610-405-3444. And there's that's your email, Jen at barloomapothecary.com, and your beautiful website. And there's beautiful Jen.
no, thank you.
So you do consults by phone, Skype, email. What's the best way for people to contact you?
Yeah, all of the above are
Okay.
great. So anybody who wants to get in touch, they can email me, check out my website, or just give me a call. Those are all. You can connect with me in any way you want. But right now I'm in upstate New York, but I work with folks all over the country. So Skype or FaceTime are all wonderful ways to connect because I love being able to see people when I talk to them.
Right. Yes. Yes. That's good. Yeah. And we're going to be looking
Yeah.
for that documentary on with
Yeah.
these farms that you're working with, Jen. So we
Yeah.
know where we can get real food.
Absolutely. You got it.
All
I'm
right.
working on it. So thank you
Okay.
guys so much. This has been wonderful. Thanks
It
for
has
having
been.
me.
Yes. Thank you for joining us and for all of this wonderful information and all of the great work you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm just going to give a little shout out for our next webinar. If you just bear with me for 1 minute, I'm trying to find my paper here. Okay, our next webinar will be on June 28th from 7 to 8 p.m. Patty Reese, who is a certified holistic health coach, nutrition recovery coach, educator, and she's also a chef. The title of her presentation is The Addiction Food Revolution. Patty is very passionate about the epidemic of substance abuse disorder and offers practical tools and education regarding the missing link in addiction recovery, the nutritional aspect. In her presentation, she will explain biochemical suicide prevention and will share her own personal spiritual journey and how clean food, nutrients, and self care saved her life and helped her create the pro recovery 5-star diet. Right, and Jen?
Oh man,
How important is this with this addiction epidemic that's going on and
oh,
so overlooked?
incredibly important.
Yeah,
So that
incredibly.
sounds like an amazing webinar. I'll definitely be tuning into that next week.
Next month. Yep. Yeah,
Next
we
month,
appreciate
sorry.
it.
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
so that's that. And so, as you know, your confidence in us is our highest compliment. If you find value in the services that TDI and Health Through Awareness offer, please consider leaving us a positive Google review. I think that's everything. Once again, Jen, thanks so much for this wonderful presentation.
Oh my gosh, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I hope you guys have a great night. Thanks for spending your Wednesday evening with me.
My pleasure.
All
Take
right.
care. All right.
Take
Good
care.
night.
Bye-bye.
You're off. You're unplugged.